Lettuce seeds requires a flash of light to germinate. So I'm just going to tamp it down, and I'm not going to really cover it. I'm just going to tamp it down to kind of press the seeds into the soil because it's got to have that little bit of light to germinate. Hi, I'm Annette and welcome to Kitchen Garden Farmhouse. Food. Grow as much as you can, as often as you can, and as long as you can. Today I'm going to sow different types of lettuce. However, as time goes on, follow along as you can to see how I take care of the lettuce and for the great harvest. Basically, lettuce can fall into 4 main categories. You have your crisp head, your loose leaf, your romaine, and also your butterhead. If you have never grown or tasted fresh, homegrown lettuce, you're in for a really treat because they taste so much better than anything in the store in my personal experience. There are many different types of lettuce that's very quick growing and they're easy to take care of. And if you are a beginner in gardening, this is a great crop to start off with. Lettuce is a cool season crop and it grows very well in the spring and the fall in most regions. But also lettuce is a great crop to grow indoors year-round. It is best that you stagger your plantings so you can have lettuce ready to cut and use at any time. As long as the lettuce is not exposed to really hot temperatures, they are not very demanding, and you can grow them anywhere in containers, be it decks, porches, patios, or balconies, really lots of places. Unless you're growing your lettuce under a grow light, they need about 5 to 6 hours of direct sunlight per day. And also when the temperatures gets hotter throughout the year, they really benefit from an afternoon shade, and you might have to do that with shade cloth depending on your location and where you're growing your lettuce at. I am going to be sowing my lettuce seeds in some cell trays today. But if you're wanting to wait and direct sow your lettuce outside, you might need to wait until your soil temperature is at least 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Now there are some lettuce varieties that you can get that are much more cold hardy, and you can plant them in a little bit more colder temperatures if you can find those varieties available in your area. If you're wanting to direct sow your lettuce seeds in the springtime directly in the ground outside, you actually can sow them anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks before your last spring frost date, or depending on where you live and how cold your climate is, once again until your ground is workable at least 45 degrees Fahrenheit. However, if you're wanting to sow your seeds indoors to get a head start, you can do that approximately, depending on where you live, about 4 weeks before your last spring frost date. And of course, you'll have to harden them off before you plant the tender seedlings outside. I'm going to be going over with you now some lettuce varieties that I would be sowing at this time. Gourmet blend. Look how delicious sounding this is. This blend has 5 different lettuce seeds: Grand Rapids, salad bowl, red salad bowl, oak leaf, and flame. Most seed packets has the continental United States on the back of the seed packet. This is for outdoor sowing. This does not take into the effect if you're going to sow the seeds early inside. And you see how it goes horizontal from west to east. And it's only divided up into 4 categories. So I'm in Florida, I'm right here. So you can see I can sow these as early as January. And then up here, if you live in this section, you can sow these as early as February. And then if you live up here or even more northern, then you want to wait at least until April. However, keeping in mind that is for outdoor sowing. So if you want to get a jump start, you can start about a month before these dates indoors. And we're going to have lettuce anywhere between 45 to 50 days with this variety. Chef's Medley. This is a very unique lettuce here. We can have lettuce as early as 21 to 45 days. This blend here was chosen by Chef John Platt from Boulder, Colorado. This lettuce blend has 7 different types of lettuces inside the 1 seed packet. Farmer's Market blend, 21 to 45 days to harvest. This blend has 6 different types of lettuces. Jericho. This is a very special lettuce. It was bred especially for the deserts in Israel to withstand some of the heat. I'm going to be taking some of these seeds out of this survival garden seed pack. I have not used any of these seeds yet. I've had these seeds for a few years. So out of that seed packet, I'm going to be using the black seeded Simpson, Butter Crunch Butterhead, and Salad Bowl Red. You want your seed starting mix to be as fine as possible. So this is a strainer, a sifter. You can buy one online, or you definitely can make one. And this is just a 5-gallon bucket to hold it. So the finer the mix, the better. And when you're starting your seeds off in little trays, indoors or outdoors. So sifting the peat moss, you'll be amazed of how much clumps are in the mixture, and probably the same goes with the cocoa coir. So once again, sifting this first is going to give you an advantage in making sure that your peat moss or your cocoa coir, which makes up the bulk of your seed starting mix, is going to be as fine as possible. And as you can see, there's lots of clumps left behind. You don't want this in your seed starting mix because you want to try to prevent air gaps. It's one thing to add perlite for aeration. It's another thing to have these big clumps that creates air gaps, which is not good for your seedlings. And you can see once it is put through the sifter, you can see how fine and nice the peat moss is now. No clumps or lumps in it. For this seed starting recipe, I'm going to use 3 parts your sphagnum peat moss, or you can use cocoa coir, combination of them both, to 1 part vermiculite and 1 part perlite. Now your parts can be anything you want it to be. It can be a pint jar, it can be a bucket, it can be a pitcher. Whatever you use as a part is fine. So I'm adding my 3 parts of peat moss. One part vermiculite. And by the way, on the vermiculite, it's better to use the finest grade. You can see this right here is very fine. Very fine. And then 1 part of your perlite. Then just mix all of that up very well. Now it's time to add the water. And just mix this well. Peat moss has a tendency to repel water at the beginning, but once it takes on that moisture, it has a good tendency to hang on to it, which helps with your moisture retention with your seedlings, which is great. To this mixture, I use 5 pints of ingredients and 2 pints of water. And as you can see, just a little bit of water comes from it. The moisture in this is really good. I've already got my seed starting mix made. I've already moistened it with water. So I'm just going to fill these trays up. And what I like to do after I get it filled up, I like to tamp it down a little bit just to make sure that it's all the way down there to the bottom of these seed trays. Because when I fill this, I can feel it's kind of empty down there. And you can see how much difference it makes. So I'll just fill it up a little bit more here. It's very important that we mark our seed trays. So whether you do that with a popsicle stick or a marker or painter's tape, it's very important that we do this. The very first thing I'm going to do is mark my seed trays. So I already have the names of all the lettuces written on this painter's tape, and I'm just going to put these on the cell trays before I even start planting them. This is the Butter Crunch Butterhead. And as you know, lettuce seeds are very, very small. So I'm just going to sparingly put a few on each cell. And lettuce seeds requires a flash of light to germinate. So I'm just going to tamp it down, and I'm not going to really cover it. I'm just going to tamp it down to kind of press the seeds into the soil because it's got to have that little bit of light to germinate. And even though I have pre-moistened the soil, I'm just going to spritz it a little bit with some water to wet the seeds. This one here is Chef's Medlin blend from Boulder, Colorado. This one here is going to have lots of different textures, colors, and flavors. This one here is the Farmer's Market blend. This one here is the Black Seeded Simpson. This is the Gourmet blend. This is Jericho. All the other seeds were dark. This one here is light, and you can see it next to the soil, where the other ones were dark and it was harder to see them. The last one, Salad Bowl Red. Now I realize that I am putting more seeds down than what I need to, but I have so many seeds, probably more than what I'll ever use, so it's okay. Okay, so this is off to a good start. I have my lettuce seeds sown in these cell trays, and then just follow along as they germinate, and when it's time to plant them in containers, and then the final harvest coming up within a month or maybe a little bit longer. Now, considering that the seeds are somewhat on the top of this soil, we do not want them to dry out. So if you have a dome that you can put over your cell trays, that would be great. I don't have one at this time, so I'm just going to put plastic wrap on the top of mine to kind of hold in the moisture to give it a few days to germinate. Okay, so I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap to help hold in the moisture. Thank you so much for taking the time to stop by to watch this video. And if you have not subscribed yet, please take a moment to consider subscribing to the channel. And every time you give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and share the video with others, it will help Kitchen Garden Farmhouse to grow. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next video.